Okay, so let me go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of Friday, November the 12th, 2021. Present are myself, Doug Case, chair of the committee, Brandon Hilpert, chair of the commission and ex officio member of the committee, Patrick Anderson, member of the committee, Diana Dent, a member of the committee, and our interim executive director, Charmaine Mosley. We may have a couple more folks join us shortly. We'll go ahead and get started. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment received.
Okay. And actually, I don't think we have much in terms of updates from last week. Nothing on the budget process. I don't think anything new on staffing. We're still waiting to get information from purchasing and the contracts regarding the executive search services options, as well as updates on the panel for our review of the RFPs for the outside counsel.
I don't know if I mentioned at the last meeting that our that the individual who we gave the offer to for the admin aide position, she reached out to me and she said that her start date will be December 20th. So I've been going back and forth with the personnel department as far as trying to figure out the process to transfer her over from the library.
Okay, yeah, I don't think we had that date last time, so December the 20th. That's my birthday.
Oh.
Okay, and then in terms of the implementation ordinance and the permanent standard operating procedures, nothing new, but in terms of the interim standard operating procedures, the memo was sent to the city, and it was forwarded to the personnel for forwarding to the affected collective bargaining units, which presumably would be just the POA, but it could be somebody else. And again, that is the proposed amendment that would allow us to take a position on IA findings of officer-involved shootings and in custody deaths that occur before the 1-year period before we have the ability to independently investigate. And nothing new on office space since last week, I don't think. Nothing new on standing rules. Anything new on community outreach?
No, the event went well that Charmaine and I did, but I think we talked about that last week. I am doing I've scheduled an event in late January with a cluster of different groups, but that's just early planning.
Okay. So let me go ahead and share my agenda. Okay, and then kind of giving an overview of the agenda. We're going to finish the tentative CPP timeline that we discussed last week. And then under new business, I put 2 items. One is I was compiling a list of all of our cumulative recommendations and reading through the notes of previous meetings. In one meeting, we had a note that we wanted to discuss whether officers are going to be placed under oath during the investigation process and what happens if they are untruthful or not fully responsive. And we never really did discuss that. And so I put it on the agenda for discussion today, so we can include that in our list of recommendations. And then I also put on there requesting that we be given, and by we I mean this committee, well, actually, I guess the commission as a whole be given a draft of the implementation ordinance at least 10 days prior to the Public Services and Livable Neighborhoods Committee meeting, so that we have an opportunity to weigh in. So that may require both this committee to look it over and maybe even a special committee meeting, depending upon the timing, so that the full commission can weigh in on the second draft of the implementation ordinance. And then for next week, I want us to discuss all of the recommendations that we have compiled since the first draft came out. And I put a draft of all those recommendations attached to this week's minutes, and would appreciate it if people could take the time to read through those and see if there's anything that I've missed and anything that needs to be revised, because the plan is to finish that up in next week, so that we can forward it on to the commission, so that the commission can take a position at our open meeting in November, which would be November the 23rd. And then we can go ahead and forward the memo to District 4, well, to everybody on the PSNLN, but specifically so that our recommendations can be sent to the outside counsel who is working on the second draft of the implementation ordinance. And I would like for us to plan on additional time next week so that we have plenty of time to go through it. I'm not sure whether we can get through it in our normal hour, because that'll be kind of an important list of recommendations to give to the commission, particularly if there's anything people want to add or further discuss. And so is that a problem with anybody here if we take extra time next week to go over that document?
I may or may not be able to do it. I'm just looking at my calendar, but typically on Fridays, I have something following this.
Okay. And if so, if you could, you can give us your feedback before you have to leave. Okay, so we can go back on to today's agenda, which is to complete the project we started last week, which is revising the timeline. Let me see if I can scroll down and find that. Here we are. And I put the disclaimer we talked about, and this is how I phrased it. I said the timeline for this timeline is for commission planning purposes only. The timing of certain items, such as the docketing of city council actions, meet and confer process, etc., are beyond the control of the commission. Additionally, the length of time required for some processes, such as hiring and contracting, may take longer than originally anticipated, so that people know that this is, not something that's in stone, and it simply is for our planning purposes. And so last week we got down to essentially when the second draft was going to be available, and we have the anticipated date based on the estimate from District 4 that it will be at on January the 27th. And then I put on I put it in February it would be adopted, and that's on the assumption that it was likely to be some changes that will need to be made to the second draft before it's forwarded on to meet and confer. And so meet and confer would follow that, and using the same length of time as we had in our initial timeline, that would go through May of 2021. And the other things that are next on the timeline are
You mean May of 2022?
Yes, thank you. I'll have to correct that. And so, Elaine, if you can make a note of that. I'm not used to doing 2022 yet. And we can come back in a second to the hiring of the supervising investigator and policy analyst, which we had originally planned to do in September, but that was based on an assumption that we would have a first draft of the ordinance and meet and confer by that point in time.
Can we go back up, please?
Okay.
In February, okay.
Did you have a question or?
Yes, February 2022, that will be when PSNL refers the second draft, okay, and then they will have to refer it to council. And then council will send it to meet and confer.
Okay, that's a good point. So if you, since I don't have the Word document up, if you can make a note of that, Elena, and I can change that as well. And has anybody from a District 4 joined us?
No, not yet.
Okay. And so I want to come back in a minute and look at the hiring schedule, but moving on to adopting a memorandum of understanding with PD. You know, I think that we could do that during the yeah, maybe that should occur after the meeting confer. So maybe that ought to be in June of 2022. Does that make sense? Because there could be some stuff in the meeting confer that would affect the memorandum of understanding. So unless there's an objection, let's put June of 2022 for the MOU. And we'll come back in a second also to the hiring of the further staff.
Doug, is there a way to share the editable, to screen share an editable version of this so we can keep track of these?
Okay.
It's going to be hard to remember how each thing is being changed, which is going to affect everything after, unless we can see it.
Okay, that's a good point. So let me find a Word copy. Oops.
We should keep in mind also is budget season.
Yeah, and that's coming up on here. So
because when we're trying to get things docketed, especially this item, we just have to keep in mind budget season is happening around that time period as well.
Okay. It's taking a minute for Word to start up. Okay, so now I can go back to here, share screen. Okay. And is that sharing properly?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make this change there. And let me get rid of your pictures that I have room so that I can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to get rid of the chat. Oh, it looks like Henry has joined us. Hi, Henry. Okay, so in PS approves the implementation ordinance. And so then it, after PSNL approves it, has to go to City Council, and City Council refers it to the meet and confer. Is that correct, Charmaine?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Okay, and so And then and maybe and sends to the full council.
Yes.
Okay, and then the
So-
meeting.
So I'm thinking in maybe March 2022. You know, thinking realistically, it should be council.
Yeah, that's what I have here. I've March through May, and so is when the meet and confer would occur.
But that doesn't cover when it goes to council though.
Well, since
Council
okay, like
consideration.
I can put council refers.
And then also leave in, I guess, leave in some room for if council sends it back to council. I mean, to outside council.
Okay, so what are you saying?
So I would say extend that from March to like maybe June.
Okay, and
I was going to suggest the same thing.
okay, so how do I, hold on a second here. Insert. Okay, so we're gonna have, well, in March 2022, then we'll just put the city council considers. Considers. The implementation ordinance. Then they may refer back to the city. Would it be the city, a city attorney or outside counsel? Maybe just
I would put both just in case.
why don't we just refer back to council about that?
Yeah.
Or refer for meet and confer, okay? And since we don't know when, whether that's going to happen or not, maybe our best guess is that meet and confer would begin in May. Or
I'm okay with that.
okay.
I think that's a
May,
good
June, July,
estimate.
August, September. And so then I think that that would be May through September 2022 is meet and confer.
Although I wonder if here, so I have a concern here, which is that this document is publicly available, even though it's a draft. And that means that it's publicly available to everyone, including PD, POA, etc. And so this document is also kind of setting expectations for the commission. And so I don't want to be too conservative with these dates, you know, because I don't think any of us want this to be delayed.
I think I think we're trying to get the right balance between being realistic and conservative.
So maybe you should say May through July.
No. But there's no way that a meet and confer would happen that quickly.
So we're talking about May, June, July, August. We're talking about a 5-month process with meet and confer.
Yeah, and that I think is being
Okay.
conservative.
Okay, all right.
And Henry, if you want to weigh in, you can, but I think it's going to take that long. Do you have any thoughts, Henry?
No, I don't have any thoughts, but I would agree with Patrick that you need to be careful how you present this, as you are saying the public is going to take whatever you put out there and they are going to you're kind of establishing expectations. And that's why I was so adamant last week that, you know, what you guys put in there as far as committee actions, council actions, that's very challenging to do.
Right.
And
Then,
you-
then how about if we make it meet in the ground middle then and put August? And personally, I think that would be quick. Just knowing how long meeting conferred took on how long the meeting conferred took on getting the measure on the ballot, and especially all of the different items that are being proposed. I think it may be contentious, but we'll see. But May through August may be doable.
Doug,
Then-
just
sorry,
one
Doug.
other, oh, go
Yeah.
ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say, I think, you know, as much as we'd like this to go faster, I would say our last meet and confer, when we actually had some fairly simple things, there was some pushback on things that the community review board was already doing that suddenly the POA said they had issues with. So, and that was stuff that we were already doing. So I'm just concerned that once this goes through, the POA is going to be raising a lot of issues, some of which, to be honest, I don't really think they have. I mean, they can raise complaints about it, but they don't necessarily have the ability to stop that. But that doesn't mean they're not going to try. So I agree. I kind of agree with Doug, given how it's gone in the past, it's going to take way longer than I think any of us want or would hope. But I mean, yeah, I mean, and I also agree, Patrick, with you is the community's going to look at this and they're going to be like, why is this taking so long? And I think all of us agree it is taking way too long. But, you know, there are certain steps that we have to do. And you know, it's unfortunately, it's kind of the beast that we have to deal with.
It's more that I'm concerned about, you know, everybody already feels like it's taking a long time. So if we now come out with this revised draft, you know, what we think it's going to take, and it inevitably extends beyond this, we're just going to be escalating feelings of frustration. And I don't want this committee or the commission to escalate feelings of frustration in the community. I also think there's an effect that this has on us as commissioners. I know that when I look at this and really come face to face with, okay, so what this is suggesting is basically at least another year of all of us staying on the commission with the workload that we currently have and getting no new commissioners. That's going to be pretty overwhelming. And I think it risks some current commissioners who are really hanging on and past what they feel their limits are, to just go ahead and resign, frankly, because the thought of continuing in the current mode for a full year is going to be overwhelming. That's not to say we shouldn't do this work. I think we should, but it renews the importance of talking with City Council about some sort of interim measure that would allow some interim appointments or something in the meantime. So I'm going to stop there because I know we have a lot to get through, but this is not an innocent document. You know, it has effects well beyond our planning. And I want us to be attuned to those.
Yeah, but
And Patrick, I just want to, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I'm just going to say the flip side of that is if we don't give the community a realistic expectation, and then it goes longer, then you have
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's kind of a middle ground. But again, this document, the purpose of it is for our planning purposes, and I get that people will look at it, you know, as this is what the game plan. No, this is what is going to happen, but really it's more of a planning document for our purposes. And so then if we can skip on the hiring decisions for a second, we'll come back to that after we get everything else kind of mapped out. Okay, and so then we probably would do, well, September of 2022 would be the have the MOU. Okay, and then the city council adopts the implementation ordinance. Well, and then we have an interesting thing here, because right now we're talking about just the implementation ordinance. And again, Henry may want to weigh in on this. Henry, do you envision that we would have a separate meet and confer on the investigation operating procedures after the implementation ordinance? Or would they try to do that in one process?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you doing a separate? Are you guys doing, I don't know what you guys plan to do as far as your SOPs, what's in there, what's not in there. Are you doing SOPs plus different rules or what you're putting together? I don't know how you're formulating those.
Okay.
Anything that you guys do in regards to rules and interactions with that impact interaction, or I'm gonna say that will detail out your interactions with city staff, will be subject to meet and confer.
Right. So I get, the question was that the standard operating procedures we know are going to be subject to meet and confer. The question was, would that happen concurrently with the implementation ordinance, or would they do the meet and confer on the implementation ordinance, and then the standard operating procedures would be done after the implementation ordinance?
I think the standard operating procedures will be done after the implementation ordinance.
Okay, so I'm going to take this out here. And then we need to kind of add that in. And so if we're looking at the meet and confer being done in August, then we can put September as which would mean that in October it takes effect.
Doug, I need to jump in here for a moment and confirm what Henry said. If the implementation ordinance is happening in September, the community has expressed the strong sentiment that new commissioners should really be centrally involved in the SOPs.
Okay, well, we can talk about that when we get to
Okay.
because we've taken out the SOPs for the time being. And so in October, the implementation orders would take effect, and then and so then November through well, perhaps this could be done quicker than what we had initially envisioned. We had
Doug, pause for just a moment. Henry, just to let you know, because this meeting is live broadcast, you're not on mute, and you may have confidential stuff happening in the background.
Okay. Because we initially envisioned a 5-month process for the recruitment and selection of permanent commissioners. I'm thinking we can reduce that to maybe 3 months.
This depends, Doug. The language that we've been drafting for so long that, that affects who gets appointed and what the different seats are, it's not just our old way of doing recruitment, right? Because they're with youth seats, soliciting applications and nominations from people with previous adverse experiences and so on. It might take a bit longer. So if this is November 22 after the implementation ordinance, actually, I don't know why we couldn't start the recruitment earlier if we know that city council
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So during the meeting confer process, if
Yeah.
that's what the city council has recommended, we could begin.
So why don't we say May 2022 begin, or is that too early?
Well, so we see we have, no, we'll see. I think we need to wait until the city council has, oh, so May, yeah, maybe May. Okay, so we can change that, but they're not going to be able to, act on it though, and do the actual appointments until the ordinance takes effect. And so the earliest they could probably act on it would be November. So maybe put May through December of 2022.
Yeah.
That way, they could have a pool of people already, gathered. So when the implementation ordinance takes effect, they can begin immediately the process of appointment. Okay. Which then means in January 2023, the city council would appoint the permanent commissioners. Okay. And then some of these things are going to be out of order chronologically, but I can go back and fix them. So the budget process will stay the same. So we'll have March 2022, the development of the budget proposal, May 2022, the budget hearing, the city council approving it in June and July. And here's another staffing thing. So we need to go back and look at that. And then the mediation procedures established, well, maybe put that out a year. Okay, and then we need to look at the appointment of the permanent executive director. If we're looking at the new commissioners being appointed in what do we say, January? And assuming that the commissioners or their leadership are involved in the selection process, and selection processes for those level positions tend to take a while. I don't know, what, maybe May of 2023? What do people think?
I have no idea how these timelines work, so I defer to others.
Well, actually, maybe we can go back to the, actually, we should actually go back to look at the search process. And I guess they really can't officially begin the search process until they have the implementation ordinance. And we said the implementation ordinance was going to be in September. So we can
But Doug, remember that the community wants the permanent commissioners to do that appointment process, so that it's actually not after the implementation, it's after the process shouldn't begin until the new commissioners have been appointed.
It doesn't mean that that the recruitment can't begin. And we don't know at this point in time who is going to be conducting the process, whether it's going to be the city council with the involvement of the commission or the commission itself doing the actual conducting the process. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, but this was a unanimous sentiment from the community, that the permanent commissioners should be the ones selecting the executive director. That I know that those who were working on behalf of Measure B believe that that is in the measure itself. And so I agree that recruitment can begin before commissioners are appointed, but I wouldn't build into our own calendar that the selection or interviews or anything begin until after that date. There would be uproar about that. And so what I'm suggesting is for this, I think we have to plan for that. Yeah, for this document especially.
Okay, and then so that would mean that let me see. So the city council appoints permanent commissioners in January of 2023. So we can put January. Where I lost myself here. Where is it? Here it is. So we had previously put April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So we had initially put a 7-month process. And so maybe we can speed that up a little bit and make it a 6-month process, and so put January through June of 2023. Okay, which would then mean that the city council would appoint the person in July of 2023. Okay, and then the mediation guidelines.
I would recommend city council appointment be in August 2023.
And why is that?
It just takes, it's a process. The person has to go through the background check. That's a process in itself. Then the item has to get docketed.
Okay, so you're saying even if the search process ends in June, it would be August before they could actually be appointed by the city council. Is that what you're saying, Chairman?
Yeah. We had the interview process. That's one step. That's a long process in itself, especially with national searches. And then, all of the paperwork and background checks and all of that. It would at least take 2 months afterwards.
Okay. And do we have I don't think we have in our current timeline of when we would hire our general counsel, do we? I don't see it. Let me see. Well, here it is. Okay. We do have it. So we can go back and take a look at that. So, well, things we're going to need to add, though, we're going to need to add the the investigation procedures and again, getting to your point, Patrick, I think that our initial plan was to have us begin working on those investigation procedures. And we were actually going to have our outside counsel, we had the committee established. We kind of put it on hold until we get a new outside counsel, but we need to have the investigation procedures approved, well, developed, and then approved by the city council, go through a meeting and confer before we can hire investigators and begin doing the investigation process. And we can wait until the new commissioners are appointed before those are finalized. But I don't think we should wait on the development of those investigation procedures. Keeping in mind, we actually initially considered, I mean, our initial guideline was that our initial thinking was they would go hand in hand to the meeting and confer process.
I strongly agree with that. And my thinking is that once new commissioners are appointed, of course, they're going to have to be trained. And so development of investigation proceedings would need to wait until after they were fully trained and had some experience in what this work actually looks like. They can always go back and change investigation procedures if they need to. But one of the things that we, as people who know how to do this and have years under our belts, we can give them a template for that, so that it doesn't have to wait until after they're trained. So I strongly agree that developing investigation procedures should happen by this interim commission or the interim commissioners on the commission. Yeah, which is what you're suggesting, right?
Right. And so let me see if I hear you correctly, though. So you're suggesting that the current commission develop the draft of the investigation operating procedures, but they not be approved until there are permanent commissioners. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I don't conflict with what community views have been, and I don't think I am. No, I think that we should put in place some investigation procedures.
Okay.
With clear instructions about how the new commissioners can change them if they need to.
Okay.
But, yeah,
that makes sense. And so let me go back to
because otherwise they wouldn't be able to begin investigations until after they had been trained, after they had some experience, and then they drafted these procedures, and that's not what the community wants. So yeah, I think we
and then you have to go through
in place.
And then you have to go through a meeting and confer.
Correct.
And,
yeah.
And the meeting and confer on the investigation procedures may be even more complicated than the meeting and confer on the ordinance itself. And so let me add a couple more here. Insert. Okay, and so really there's nothing that keeps us from drafting the proposed procedures even before the meeting and confer occurs. And so when are we, and so if we are assuming that we're going to have our, well, what do we put for when we're going to have our outside counsel hired? In November. So I would say in December, we can begin the process of developing those
December of this year or next year?
this year.
Yeah, okay, good.
And so as soon as we have a new council, or that person can work with us in developing it. And then let me see, what's the date we came up with for for the meet and confer to be done? Oops. Of August. Okay. So maybe we can put December 2021 through July 2022. Develop proposed standard for I'm gonna get rid of, how do I get rid of that? There we are. For investigations. Because there could be some other standard operating procedures that can wait until the new commission is fully in place. And so it really is the investigations ones we want to begin working on now. And so then
I would suggest that Alina move this up in the chart.
okay, well, after we get it all done, we can have Alina fix it for us and put it in chronological order.
Thank you.
And so, okay, so then there's the standard operating procedures are going to need to go through the same process of PSNLN, city council, well, PSNLN, city council, and meet and confer. So maybe we'll just put August through December and put all that together. Okay. Okay. Investigation, SOPs, reviewed or LN. There we go. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. I didn't hear anybody respond.
We're nodding our heads. Yes.
Okay. I took away your faces, and so I was waiting for a response because I took away your faces so I can work on my screen here.
Doug,
Okay.
please do not use phrases like "I took away your faces." It's a little chilling.
Okay. Okay. So what that means then is that we won't be able to begin doing investigations until January of 2023. Okay, and so that'll be an important date to keep in mind as we're looking at staffing. And so now let's go back and take a looking at the staff. We've already talked about the deputy executive director, but we need to look at the supervising investigator, the policy analyst, the performance auditor, and the general counsel. And we need to kind of plan out when we want to hire those people. I think we want to bring the supervising investigator on board maybe 6 months before we actually begin doing investigations, so they can be involved in the finalizing of those procedures, and they can be involved in the hiring of the investigators and begin doing the prep work for the cases that we currently have in the hopper. So maybe June of next year. And we talked about doing the policy analyst at the same time. So I'm going to look at your faces again. Do people think that June of 2021 is the appropriate time to do that? I'm 2022.
So what I'm weighing here is that community members have expressed a desire that staff be hired by the new commissioners. I think, but what we have said many times is that if that happens, then the new commissioners are going to be so held up before they can actually do any work that it's just going to be overwhelming, and oversight itself will suffer. So that's what I'm weighing in my head. I think June 22 makes sense for these two roles. You know, a lot of this also comes down to the commission's role in hiring its own staff and how the city council situates that role.
Well, no, that role is defined in the charter. So the city council appoints the executive director, but the executive director hires the rest of the staff. And so the city council is not involved in the appointment of anybody else other than the executive director.
So what happens if a majority of the commission wants to fire a policy analyst, but the executive director does not agree?
Well, the executive director reports to the commission, but the hire and the firing of staff is done by the executive director.
Okay, well, we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of this because we're almost at the end of our time, but I think I agree that this process should start in June of next year.
Okay, and then in terms of the general counsel, is it the feeling that we should continue using contract counsel until we have a new executive director or permanent executive director? Because I think personally, the permanent executive director and the permanent commissioner should be involved in the hiring of our general counsel.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and so let me find. Okay, and so go back for a second. When do we say the August 2023 is when we were going to have the permanent executive director hired, so we probably need to allow at least 4 months. So maybe December of okay. Okay, and then the investigators we wouldn't hire until a couple of months before investigations begin. So let me just find okay, and okay. So if we say investigations are going to begin in January of 2023, then maybe in October of 2023, I'm sorry, October of 2022.
That would give them 3 months of training.
Well, hiring and the training, that's a good point. So maybe should we, what do we just decide for the investigating supervisor? In June, so maybe if that person's going to be involved, it's going to take a couple of months. June. Maybe September then. Okay, then that gives plenty of time for training as well. Okay, and then the other staff members are the performance auditor,
Doug, I have to go to my next event, so I'm going to say goodbye to all of you and see you soon.
okay, be sure to take time to look over the
Will do.
recommendations prior to next week.
Will do.
Okay, thanks. Okay, maybe we should do the hiring of the performance auditor at the same time we do the policy analyst. Does that make sense? And do that in June of 2023. So maybe do all three of those at the same time.
3 or 2?
And so I'm looking at we're looking at when we're going to hire the performance auditor. So maybe we can do the supervising investigator, the policy analyst, and the at the same time. And
Will these be executive searches or just the regular hiring process?
maybe the regular hiring process. I would think. And actually, we talked about doing one investigator sooner, but maybe what was the we probably should do all three of those at the same time. Let's remember that. So 3 staff. Then maybe we can take out the okay. So we've handled all the staffing, I think. And we've talked about all the procedures and the budget. Is there anything else that we haven't done? Okay, then why don't we, if Elena can do it for us, Elena, if you can reorganize this so that they're in chronological order.
Yes, I can do that.
And then I'll take a look at it. And if it needs any minor tweaking, I'll tweak it. If in looking at it again after this, I have some additional questions, we can bring that up, bring it up next week. So for next week's agenda, I'll put on finalize the tentative timeline. So everybody has a chance to look at it after we get it cleaned up. And then we'll spend our time next week looking at the recommendations that we want to forward on to PS and LN and the outside counsel who's working on the draft 2 of the implementation ordinance. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then I can stop sharing. And is there anything else we actually need to get done today? Okay, well, we're going to be on time today because it's, well, we're 2 minutes late.
That's fine. Oh, just a second, Doug. Will that draft have draft 2 on it, or will it just have a draft? Since it's a revised draft, I'm just asking.
Oh, for the timeline.
You're right.
Yeah, we'll put on there 10.2. I put 10.1 for today, and so we'll put
Okay.
10.2 after that.
Okay.
And if we make changes next week, it'll become 10.3.
All right. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
great. Well, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next week. And again, we're not going to be meeting on the Friday of Thanksgiving, but our recommendations next week will go to the full commission who actually meets before Thanksgiving anyway. So enjoy your week and I'll see you next week. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.